what's going on, everybody? My name is Mike from Box and Jackalope, and today I'm joined by two very special guests. We have Skoll Shorties, a prominent WoW lore YouTuber, and we have Kai, a prominent Pandaren roleplayer from Wrymrest Horde. And today we're going to talk about the future of the Huojin and the Horde, and what we think their current role is. So, welcome, guys.
Yo.
Yo.
So, the first thing I wanted to talk about is, what do you guys think about the Huojin right now, of Battle for Azeroth? Like, what do you guys think, their role is in the current storyline? Because we haven't seen too much of them, and I think that's a damn shame.
So we really haven't seen the Pandaren or the Huojin do much in Battle for Azeroth, or really even in Legion. We haven't really seen them since War of the Draenor take much of a role. And given the I think the idea is the characters that are in the embassy, such as, Bane Bloodhoof or Rokhan, and they recruit an allied race. I think we could see G Firepaw and the Huojin recruit a allied race in the future, maybe. Because right now it doesn't seem like they're doing much with the Huojin in the story.
I was just gonna say they do technically have an outpost out in Nazmir, so they definitely are still a part of the Horde itself.
Oh,
And
yeah.
of course, Brewmaster Lyn.
Oh, they do have an outpost in Nazmir?
Yep, they're the
wow.
ones that the Alliance are attacking whenever they invade Nazmir. Yep.
I remember that.
Oh, I
In
missed
the
it.
incursion or whatever.
So yeah, they're most definitely. I mean, not that it really should be doubted, but they are definitely still a part of the Horde. But I think what the biggest, I would say, disadvantage whenever it comes to being a Huojin Pandaren or even a Tushui Pandaren is the fact that Asa and G are sort of just figureheads for their factions rather than actual faction leaders. So if they're using them as, I guess you would say, the driving force of the narrative for the Huojin and the Tushui, the fact that they're kind of going down this Romeo and Juliet path kind of makes it hard to sow animosity between the two. I would say the most important thing they could do to expand on the Huojin and Tushui within the factions themselves is emphasizing the differences of their ideologies. You got the Huojin, who are quick to act, but it can be seen as a bit brash and reckless even. Whereas you have the Tushui, who, would take a more cautious and slow approach, but can be essentially damned for being too idealistic or even naive about their solutions. That's just my take on it.
That is actually spot on. I think there's not enough tension between the two playable Pandaren. Like, one moment I really like is when you join the Horde or Alliance, when Garrosh and Varian, they both tell you that, the other Pandaren are now your enemy. But in the story, we're kind of being told something separately between Asa and G, and I feel like that kind of conflicts with each other. So I think we need to see more tension between the two. Something I've mentioned before, but I guess it'd be kind of awkward given how much development they've had, is I actually want Asa and G's relationship to fall apart in some way, shape, or form, just because I feel like we can't have any tension between the two in that aspect. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I mean, you go ahead. Oh, all right, I'll go ahead. We're pulling a Canadian. I think it would be really. I think we brought it up before on your channel, Box.
Mm-hmm.
With the idea of essentially G Firepaw and Asa being taken more into this war in Battle for Azeroth, and Sylvanas is someone that does acknowledge, like, hey, Anduin and Bane were writing each other. I'm certain that G and Asa in some form are holding some kind of communication with each other behind Sylvanas. So I could see them pulling that in the story, and Sylvanas trying to misuse G Firepaw's trust in Asa, and maybe even try and break that apart in some way. Like, I don't know how, but Sylvanas could stage an entire attack from the Twaushi on a Huojin settlement or something. Sylvanas is a very cunning character, so she could ruin G Firepaw's and Asa's whole thing that they got going on.
Now, I will say that I don't particularly disagree with that. But keeping with what they say about the future, how they're going to try and not really shift away from the faction war plot, but how they're going to focus a bit more on the B plot.
Mhm.
I feel like that if they're going to draw any attention to Pandaren again, that would be the absolute perfect time if they're going to into forcing them to kind of work together, whether it's taking down Ashara or something like that, kind of forcing them to work together as they did with the Legion, and shine, like make their differences of ideals shine. Like maybe they bring together the Huojin and Tushui monks. Maybe they've got to work together to, I don't know, take out some Naga base or something like that. And they've got two different ways they can do it. Again, just like with the Isle. And maybe the Huojin solution is one that's going to lead to a lot of loss of life, but it like will take out like a big leader, maybe like a big powerful leader, but it's going to lead to like maybe killing a bunch of innocents or something like that, because the Huojin are supposed to be sort of like a ends justify the means kind of faction, which I was mentioning to Box earlier. I absolutely love that in factions. And then you have the Tushui, who are more idealistic and more moralist. Like they don't want to break what they find as their ideal of right and wrong, even if, you know, for the pursuit, I guess you would say, of a greater good. So maybe she would, just like whenever he blew the ship free from Shinzen Su, that could be a good way of kind of re-solidifying her differences of opinion, you know, with the Tushui in general, and, you know, with her and G, and a way to kind of drive a wedge between them yet again.
Oh, I absolutely love that, what you just said. I absolutely love that, because I'm just thinking about how awesome it would be for, like, a story of them, like, reuniting in Nazjatar or something, but then they realize why they're on the opposite faction, like you just said. Like, that would be awesome. That would be absolutely awesome. One thing that, like, I really don't like right now that Blizzard does, like, this is gonna sound really funny, playing Alliance, I saw more of the Huojin than I did actually playing Horde. Just through like random world quests and such. But I wish, I know G Firepod got some dialogue recently in the war campaign, but I dislike lines like I'm gonna go punch dinosaurs when he hasn't had development for years. Stuff like that kind of bothers me. But I think overall, I guess the consensus here is, yeah, these two characters are very underdeveloped. One thing that I want to get back to about G Firepod, I guess, before we get off of the leaders, is every time I play through the Wandering Isle, I actually always see myself siding with G Firepot in that scenario right there.
It's definitely a touchy subject where you're gonna have to. Yeah, it's a hard decision, and sometimes you have to make the hard decisions. And I think in Ace's ideology, she was, I want to say wrong, because in that moment he's dying because this splinter, this ship, is in this wound, and it's only going to continue to get worse. And you need to pull off that band-aid, essentially, or in this case, you need to pull out this ship from this wound in the turtle. You need to heal it. Yeah, and it's kind of funny because we're dealing with this giant sword in the planet of Azeroth. Is G Firepod going to be like, hey guys, let's use all this Azerite as a bomb to push the sword out?
We need to get some more explosives over here.
Ace is gonna be like, you ain't doing this shit again.
Ace, look at what you've done. She comes over, it's like the same cutscene again.
It's the same cutscene, just it's they just put the Sargeras sword and the Silithus in there.
Yeah, and they even put it just poorly. Maybe it's like lapping over her face a little bit.
I hope you can forgive yourself. Oh man.
Honestly, I remember
Microsoft Sam.
When I first watched that scene, and this isn't, I'm sorry if I'm dissing Asa fans or Twaushi fans, but I really didn't like Asa in that scene, because she was like, I hope you can forgive yourself for doing this, and then they heal afterwards, like.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
Oh, I was always the same way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, genuinely, like, it's gonna come off as biased, because it seemed like the three of us are in agreement on the fact that his solution was justifiable, like, it was good. But I do know a lot of people that genuinely think the opposite. They're like, G was a reckless idiot, for jumping to solutions. Like they could have found some other way to figure it out.
And yeah,
I can
he could've-
understand.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I was
I
gonna
was gonna
say,
say-
I can understand both perspectives. on
Yeah.
the-
I was just gonna say, they could have killed Shenzhen Zhu. Is that his name? It's been
Yep.
a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shenzhen Zhu. Okay, good. Just making sure, because there's a lot of zoos and there's a lot of Shens in there, and that hurts my brain. But
Yeah. Well, they all have meanings, so it's pretty good.
they he could have killed the Wandering Isles, and that would have sucked. Because I'm pretty sure he would have sunk, and everybody would be on there drowning. They have to get their Pandaren life floats on that and whatever.
It was a
But
very
that-
risky scenario.
This is completely off the rails, but I really want the Wandering Isles and the Tortolan to meet at some point.
That would be so cool.
Yeah. That's what my main character Kai. I've been trying to think of a good plot that could kind of have him interact with Tortolans a bit. He's an Earth and Ring shaman, so I'd have to
It would be really great if that was the allied race that the Pandaren brought in. Just saying, Blizzard. Just
Yeah.
bring in those Tortolan for Horde and Alliance and have one group from the Huojin bring in some Tortolan and the Alliance bring in that.
I
Yeah, I
would
think-
absolutely be okay with that.
Yeah, I think
I'm-
a lot of people are expecting it to be the Jinyu and what's that?
Hosen.
The Hosen. Now, I would be okay with either one, really, but I would say Tortolan, in my opinion, would be the cooler option.
Tortolan would definitely be the cooler option there. I actually really would love the Jinyu to be playable. I have a friend who wants the Hosen like more than anything since they were made in this Pandaria. I don't, for some reason, like I couldn't see the Hosen being playable more or less than Jinyu.
The problem with the Hosen is they're super hunched compared to any other race, and that would
Yeah.
be a lot of clipping issues. And it's not that I don't want them; I really do want them as a playable race because I really enjoyed the Hosen, but it's tricky. The Hosen are tricky. The Jinyu are easy because they have the Night Elf rig.
Yeah, and I think
Allied races. Sorry.
Oh no, you got it.
I was gonna say the allied races all depend on the rigging, and if a race that you want shares a skeleton with another race, it's very possible that they becoming an allied race. That's why I'm very advocate about Machinathal becoming an allied race, because they share that Kultiran rig.
Oh, they do. I hope.
Do they? Oh, they do.
Yeah.
That took me a moment. I was like,
Let's
How
not
did
make it a
I-
video about the Machinathal. I don't want to make
That'll be part 2 at some
Part
point in
2.
the future.
Skoll Shorties talks about the Machinathal for an hour.
yeah, man, I would love to see ogres or Machinathal for the
Me as
Horde. Man,
well.
that would be so awesome.
So
Glad we're on that page too.
so the next thing I actually did want to talk about with like the Pandaren and the Horde, and this is something Kai brought up to me the other day, and I see people talk about it a lot in MMO Champion, is a lot of people say the Huojin or the Horde Pandaren, they just don't make sense anymore, and that it's like it feels awkward to play one. I could certainly say being in the War of the Thorns as a Horde Pandaren was pretty awkward, not gonna lie. I disagree with that statement. I actually do feel like my character belongs in the Horde because he's just fought alongside them for so many years. He knows all the members and he believes in their same ideals. But I want to hear what you guys both have to say about that because I think you guys will both have some pretty good takes on that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioning Rexar, that's I would say his point of view is an arguable justification for why a Huojin Pandaren or anybody like that hasn't been a part of the Horde might think, the Horde could use some help in this sense. Not so much against Sylvanas, because I mean it's very clear that there's a revolution of sorts trying to brew. You know what I mean? Like even the toy, that you get from Sarfang's, like the smallest acts of defiance,
You can't say that about the Dark Lady. She doesn't do anything wrong. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Yeah, it's true. How dare I?
Get that dying meme out of here.
But I would say, yeah, like you said, you've been if you're a Pandaren player that's already been there the entire time, you've got to think about the fact that you care about the Horde. Like, the Alliance, from what you would know, isn't going to stop now. Like, if they defeat the Horde, it's not just going to be like, ha, we beat them, it's okay now. No, it's going to be full on. It's going to be a massacre.
Oh, we're dead.
Like, yeah, as like in like I was saying with Rexar, like what he said about Jaina. You know, Jaina, from our points of view, you know, obviously we can see if you're leveling a character on Alliance, Jaina might not be so inclined to go around and want to kill everything. But if you've read the books, you know, if you were part of her kicking all the Sun Reavers out of Dalaran, like she was killing them like left and right. And then in the book, she was talking about wanting to massacre all of Orgrimmar. I think somebody mentioned her even going into detail about killing the orphans or something.
Yeah, I think she
Well,
was
there
gonna
are
flood the
orphans, and
city.
there are orphans in Orgrimmar, so yeah, she would have she would have flooded and killed orc babies, well, not orc babies, but orc kids.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
orc children do live in Orgrimmar. Orgrimmar is a city, so there are houses in there. Obviously, we don't see that in game, but
Yeah.
there are houses in Orgrimmar, and you know,
Yeah.
she would kill orc families. And thankfully, Kalagos and Thrall stopped her. But
Yeah, and this was even
that would've been
before.
good.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is even before the burning of Teldrassil. So it's like, you know, if your character cares about the Horde, you know a lot of good people in the Horde. There are a lot of good people in the Horde. Some that don't specifically side, you know, not always with the, I guess you would say, the military. But then you've got some that are just with the Earthen Ring, some in the Cenarian Circle. They just happen to be, you know, races that belong to the Horde. So I mean, there's one reason your character could care about the fate of the Horde. You don't want to know. You don't want to leave all these people that you've come to love and care about to just be massacred without, you know, I guess without, what's that word? I don't know the word, but yeah, just massacred.
Exactly, and like at this point too, like if you've been playing, like obviously, like say you've been playing since Mists of Pandaria, your character helped liberate the Horde from Garrosh. You fought alongside Vol'jin. You fought against the Legion with the Horde. These are your brethren at this point. You know what I mean? You chose that side for a reason when you left the Wandering Isle.
Yeah, and if your character's the type that, you know, you're trying to think of the long haul, which I would say I try to paint my Huojin characters to be. I know some people have their own takes on what the Huojin philosophy means for their character, or even the Tushui philosophy, you know.
Mhm.
But for mine, it's more like they would believe, like, against amazingly powerful, horrifying enemies like the Legion before, and now the Old Gods. They're not going to think that, you know, a bureaucratic sort of, I guess you would say, impractical faction like the Alliance is going to have the, I guess you would say, the dispassionate calculus to take down an enemy like that. They're not going to be quite as effective as the Horde would be, and that's ultimately what I guess a lot of my characters think matters.
And yeah, and like the thing about that like one of the things I always liked about the Horde is like all the different ideologies within it, right? Like they're almost like a group of survivors, most of them, who have kind of come together, just survive in this world where they're almost like misfits, I guess.
Right.
But it's a family almost, you know. That's what I've always liked about the Horde. And then usually when something like Sylvanas or Garrosh threatens that, we all kind of come together and free it.
Fix it.
Yeah.
You don't just give up. You're not there. The Horde aren't supposed to be fair weather friends. You know, you stick together. Like, you signed on for this. They helped you when you needed it. You're gonna help them, you know, when they need it. And right now, the Horde, you know, needs help. It's divided.
They need
yet
the
again.
Huojin.
Yeah, they definitely need more people with the Huojin state of mind, in my opinion. Or maybe G Firepaw could, you know,
Do something or say something.
Do a thing already.
Yeah,
he could do that whole the time to act is now thing. He could act. But then again, you know, Pandaren are still a bit of a controversy. So
They are a controversy.
Very sad.
One thing I want to bring up while we were referring to family, the Pandaria storyline, the Pandaren philosophy is fighting for, you know, Shen says it at the beginning of the cinematic, we fight for home, we fight for family. The Horde is the Huojin's family.
Yes.
So of course they're going to stand and fight with them, and they're going to protect their home. They're but there's plenty of Huojin who have been in the Horde for years now. You know, given the confusion that is the timelines in WoW, they've been at least in the Horde for at least, I say, 3 years, I'd say, at the least.
Yeah.
And, you know, despite it being technically like 6 to 7 years now that the Pandaren have been a part of the Horde, which is crazy when you think about it.
Flies by.
Really, that expansion was like 4 expansions ago, 3 expansions ago. That's really crazy. Like Worlds of Draenor was 3 expansions ago, I think. So 4 expansions.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, that hits you. I mean, the expansions are like 2 years apart, but still, it really does hit you.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, I remember just, gosh, Blood Elves first coming out, man, that was crazy. And Death Knights,
Oh,
Death Knight's free.
man, they were everywhere. All that yelling.
I remember there was
yeah,
a
I'm
video
sorry.
of like a level 60 Death Knight soloing like a level 70 when they were first released or something.
I remember
They
that.
were stupid. Yeah, they were.
They can just
ridiculous.
face roll. I remember Death Knights. They were fun when they came out. I love the Legion not war campaign, but its campaign. But what I was also going to refer to that MMO Champion likes to yell a lot about is the Tauren also don't fit well with the Horde because of their philosophies and their culture. They're very peaceful. But the Tauren have been with the Horde for a very long time. They view the orcs and the trolls as their brothers. Like, that was the clique back in the day. The orcs, Tauren, and trolls, they were the buddies. They were the crew. These Forsaken, these Blood Elves, these Goblins, those guys were the newbies that really just pissed everybody off most of the time with their
Even now.
attitude.
Even now,
yeah.
Yeah, those three just kind of just cling together. You know, that's the Horde.
I feel like
And-
I feel like the Alliance War campaign was Goblins Suck, the end.
Poor
Yeah.
the introduction to Azerite. Goblins aren't the best of people. Wow, Anduin. Wow. Nobody remembers the good actions of Gazlo, of him giving Bane that he didn't even charge Bane for those explosives. Nobody remembers Gazlo being selfless. It's a shame.
I always
Yeah.
feel like the Tauren are like the heart of the Horde, honestly. Like they're
That's what Thrall said.
Exactly. I was gonna say.
It's kind of ironic that, of all people, the leader of the Forsaken has imprisoned Bane, who is of the race that convinced the Horde to accept the Forsaken into their ranks.
Yeah, that's something I brought up. I was like,
God. There's some level of irony in that right there.
when Bane got arrested, I was like, these are the people that brought you in the Horde. Like, what's Hamul gonna think while he's in the wound right now? He's gonna be like, okay, I do not need to lose another of Karen's people. Karen died not too long ago. If Bane dies, Hamul is just gonna be depressed.
Surprised the High
Yeah.
Mountain didn't just back out of the Horde right there.
They sounds like they are, and like
Yeah.
Mela was
Seems-
pissed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Melo-
glad to see that. I'm glad. Yeah, I was like, I'm glad she's like putting her.
Mela's pissed, Rexar's pissed. You don't mess with Rexar.
That
No,
was
you don't screw with Rexar.
that was the point where G Firepaw, like his dialogue was okay there, but wait, that's where he should have talked about his past in the Siege of Orgrimmar.
They really, yeah. We've also talked about that a lot.
That
Like,
would have been
why-
perfect.
Well, yes, I would love to see him just snap one of these. Like maybe somebody's just barking at him about something, and he's like, "Do you know what I've been through? What my people have been through? Like while we were all being held down in the Valley of Strength, you know, with blades to our necks, you know,
I was
all
gonna
being
say,
executed by the Corcoran, and we've still stuck by the Horde. You know what I mean? The
Oh,
Huojin have been through some shit.
I wanted to bring that up. I mean, again, it's a very important topic, but maybe that's the reason why G Firepaw is either apprehensive or will jump at the opportunity of joining the rebellion, because he didn't even really get a chance to join the rebellion. He got, brought over and was asked about Pandaren artifacts that he had no clue about. Like, one, he's from the Wandering Isles. Use your brain.
Yeah.
Two, I don't think he knows anything about the Pandaren artifacts anyways, but they were just abusing him and they were going to execute him. It was Asa that saved G. I was surprised that we didn't have any Horde characters really care about G Firepaw. And not too far away from G was Eitrig, who also was suffering just as well. They were both bleeding out, the poor guys. Like,
Yeah.
both Eitrig and G Firepaw have stuck with the Horde, despite being abused by them, being treated like crap by them. And
Yeah.
I think it'd be really cool if they had G Firepaw essentially be like, you know what, let's do the Huojin philosophy. We're gonna jump right in. We're gonna side with Starfang. I am not letting myself become a victim again by Sylvanas. Like, Sylvanas even brings up in the book Before the Storm, the Forsaken and the Pandaren are yin and yang. They are completely opposite. She does not
Yeah.
understand them at all.
Yeah, that's during the parade, right? She says that.
Yeah, she was like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. What the heck is this? They're too happy. That's what Sylvanas is like. They're too happy.
You said
Too much.
you said
These things
you
are.
said that about the Huojin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Absolutely.
dancing. Ribbon dancing.
I remember the ribbon dance.
Yeah.
It's Kung Fu Panda 3 all over again.
I still am surprised they didn't even put G in the feast. Come on. I know
That was insulting.
I was
Yeah.
very upset about that. Not gonna lie.
You
I
have
like
to include G Firepaw, a Pandaren. You have to include. You could have at least invited Shen. Okay, I would have been fine with they would just like have Shen as a cameo, but no, they're just.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does seem like it seems like they're trying to be a little modest about incorporating Pandaren. Like, I'm not really too upset because I know a lot of people that are very big fans of Pandaren, as they were with gnomes before this expansion, I would say.
Yeah,
Um,
it
like,
took
they
them a
feel like-
while.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it took them a while. I was gonna bring this up when you were referring to G Firepaw and his dinosaur punch. Goblins and gnomes have always been kind of like the butt of World of Warcraft. They've been the jokes. They've been the more humorous side of things. And recently in Battle for Azeroth, they've taken the goblins and the gnomes in a little bit more of a forefront and a more serious role. I mean, Galux is still funny, but they have the whole thing with Gazlo and the goblin and the gnome couple. They've got this whole Azerite thing with the goblins. But they also got the Mechtorg story recently.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's good.
I was gonna say, I really hope that they do that again with the Pandaren, that they take the Pandaren in a forefront nature. But again, they did get their own expansion essentially, so I can understand why they're apprehensive about making the Pandaren a focus again.
One thing that I got like really triggered about, and I've calmed down since I made this video, but I made that video about like the 8.1.5 like war campaign because in the original cutscene G wasn't there again, and I was.
I
like,
remember that.
I remember Jackie was in the room. I was literally yelling, "What the beep?" It's like,
Yeah. Even the allied races leaders were there, and G freaking Firepaw could it be like, man?
but
I'm glad that they added him in because that would have just been wow.
Not-
What?
Not that. Not to try and take personal credit for Vox and me, but we were on the forums about this a lot.
I made a tweet about it, and then I tweeted to Box when they were like, "Hey, here's G."
I remember that actually. You were the first one to tell me about it, and I got home. I was like, yeah.
Because I knew you were the most upset about it. Like, everyone else is like, G Firepaw, whatever. I don't care about him.
I remember there was another YouTuber. I forget who they were, but it was they were gonna make a joke video. I think it was Taliesin and Evitel. They were gonna make a joke video.
Yeah, they
about it or
were.
something.
I remember I tweeted at them, I was like, you guys need to make a joke about G Firepaw not being there again. Because I know I like G, and like I like using humor to kind of like side my commentary on certain things, because G deserved to be there.
Mhm.
But
Oh no, I remember this is random, but I remember they did that really funny skit about him at the feast or something.
Yeah.
That was really funny.
let me in!
I mean,
Poor guy.
to be fair, does a Pandaren really want to be at a non-Pandaren feast? I mean, come on.
That is true.
The food probably wasn't as good. It was
No,
like
not at
probably
all.
like,
Probably like meat haunches and like a bunch of.
I mean,
primitive
Northam was
crap.
eating chicken, so
If there's no Storm Stout brew, I'm out of there.
Yeah, man.
That's the good stuff. So one thing that I think that we were talking about earlier is the Shadow Pan, and I guess where they stand right now, because Skull brought
Oh,
up
yeah.
before this that, like, they were kind of leaning towards Alliance, and there actually was some that were tagged Alliance and Warlords of Draenor But
Yeah.
so I guess I'll say my personal stance on it. I could definitely obviously see them being very like hesitant of the Horde after Garrosh Hellscream. But I actually see them kind of just staying neutral in Pandaria at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Not to advertise a future video, but I have a it's kind of like a fan theory video about Garrosh. It's like an alternate path for Garrosh in the Shadow Pan, but that's a whole nother story. But I always just kind of see them remaining neutral, but I definitely could see them, especially after Mist, leaning towards the Alliance if they were to, I guess, pick a side. But what do you guys think about that?
I'll let you start on that one if you want.
All right. So I did bring up a few things about the whole Shadow Pan and their slightly biased nature towards the Alliance, and again, it makes sense because Garrosh essentially just gave the middle finger to Terran Zoo at every moment in Pandaria. He ruined the Veil, which I also found. I was gonna bring this up too. If you quest in Pandaria, back in the day, they did this too. With certain quests, they would actually show the progress of the current patch with certain quests. Like if you did the Dream Brew or some sort of brew in the Valley of Four Winds, you would be able to see the Veil of Eternal Blossom slowly progress into a Shan-fested or a excavation site.
Oh,
Or in the Temple of the White Tiger, which we're next to right now, you can visit the moment where Anduin is trying to get us back into the Veil. We got kicked out, essentially, in this version of it. Before, it was like us just trying to get it the first time. The second time, it's Anduin trying to convince us to go back into the Veil and heal it. And we, of course, convince Zhuen by fighting Varian and Sha-infested versions of Varian, I suppose. But that's just something I wanted to bring up briefly that they touched upon in the patches. Like, they showed current events. But that's a completely side note. I just wanted to say that.
no, it's
with,
actually
like,
really cool.
It is really cool. I really like when they do that stuff. They should do that more. But
I was just gonna agree. I was like, yeah, that was so cool. I remember seeing that same cutscene like at that same questing zone in the Valley of the Four Winds. And whenever I did it on a different character, I was like, wait a minute, that wasn't... Like, did they change that?
yeah.
I was so bewildered. The one at the pools, I don't remember the name of the...
It was
pools
like
up there.
the Jinyu showed you a vision, and like
Yeah.
you got to. No, it wasn't a. The Jinyu saw the vision too, and like he was like, "It's so beautiful," and then they changed the dialogue to, "What is this? What? It's
Yeah.
horrifying." And then they have the when you drink the tea or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I remember that now.
so cool.
Okay.
Yeah. I really like it when they did that stuff. They did it twice. They did it. Well, technically, they did it 3 times. They did the first time, the normal time. The second time, it's the excavation site in Pandaria. And then the third time, it's, Garrosh Sha nuking the place. But the Shadow Pan have every reason to not trust the Horde after the events of Garrosh. Of course, they do actually have a friendship and respect for Huojin after the events of Shadows of the Horde, but Huojin's dead, unfortunately. He's a ghost now, but he's dead. And Sylvanas is definitely not doing the Horde a good service right now in the world. She's using the blood of Azeroth to war instead of heal the planet. And I remember there's a world quest where the Shadow Pan are helping the Alliance sabotage the not sabotage, but they're fighting the Mogu and the Zandalari that are working Verzul, but they're helping the Alliance strictly against the Zandalari and the Mogu, and I'm certain that they're it's to oppose Zul and his group, but they don't help the Horde at all against that group at all. There's no world quest for the Shadow Pan.
Wow.
And from a Shadow Pan perspective, like you're not like, if you're a Shadow Pan, you're not questing out in Zandalar. You don't know, like these are all just Zandalari to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna expect they're just all your enemy. So obviously the fact that the Zandalari are now in the Horde's ranks is going to be.
I was gonna bring that up too.
Yeah, very rightfully a sour note for a faction that was already a bit averse to the Horde's races. I mean, even before the Allied races, the Tauren and their distinction, like with the Yongle, and then the Trolls. I mean, even the Isle Pandaren were taught from cubhood. I don't know if they call it cubhood or childhood. I don't remember which one.
Probably
But,
cubhood.
yeah, I think I remember hearing that term, so I was trying to be correct about it. Anyway, yeah, they were taught about the Trolls. I mean, all they can think of is the most crude, I guess you would say, visual of what a troll is. They're not really thinking too much about the distinctions between a Zandalari troll and a regular troll. I mean, they've already had these, I guess you would say, preconceptions about what the Horde is, and what the Horde has done to their people in the past, and where the Zandalari allied with the Mogu, even if people will say it was just an offshoot of the Zandalari, well, you still don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
And
It's nice that we had a character like Huojin kind of like help with that, with making them trust a troll, which I kind of wish they focused a little bit more on the book, but I don't think they really did.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wish that they focused on that with the Huojin, or at least any Pandaren, their reaction to the Zandalari joining the Horde. Like, even if it was like a small little dialogue box or something of, Zandalari and Ogremar and the Pandaren, like, NPC, like, says something about it, like, oh, Zandalari. Like, they usually don't hold grudges. That's kind of the thing about the Pandaren. They're pretty chill about most things, but the Zandalari are, like, one of the few things where they're like, ugh.
Yeah, I couldn't see them being too thrilled about it. It actually, that was another thing. It did feel kind of weird, like, us being the ones to recruit them, but then again, the forgiving thing, like you said, too. But we don't know, the thing that always bothered me is we don't know, like, if it was just an offset with Prophet Zul, or, you know what I mean? Because I guess they're still the Zandalari before, so.
But there were Mogu there.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point. And the Mogu were not friendly with Rastakhan Zandalari at that point.
That's true.
But again, I think the Shadowpan, in my view, aren't going to, throw themselves at the Horde unless, Sylvanas does the exact same thing that Garrosh did and challenges the whole world, which she might, let's be fair here, she's Sylvanas. I don't think the Shadowpan are going to involve themselves unless Pandaria itself gets threatened or the world gets threatened. But I do think that ultimately the Shadowpan are definitely more biased and more friendly with the Alliance right now, unless the Horde, or Huojin in this sense, rekindles that friendship in some way.
I could honestly see the Shadowpan not so much favoring the Alliance, in my opinion. Because, not to say obviously that they would be animus towards the Alliance, but I would see them just being so focused on Pandaria right now that they would probably be paranoid about, like, this Azerite thing going on, and probably be extremely militant against even both factions. I would like to hear about something like that, even maybe even a way to kind of gray up the Shadowpan, because they're supposed to be a bit, ruthless and stuff. Like, maybe, there's some Azerite that shows up, maybe it's a lot, and it's I don't know.
They are dealing with, if you do the island expeditions, which I love that they have little lore bits in them, they have the Mantid Queen, the new Mantid Queen. She's having the Mantid collect the Azerite and war with the Shadowpan already. And the Shadowpan are like, we just dealt with the Mantid Swarm and they're back again. What the heck is this? And then they have the Mogu. Apparently there's a bunch of Mogu construct facilities beneath Pandaria that are being discovered, and the Mogu are starting to activate them. So, yeah, Pandaria is still full of
a lot of peril,
a lot of problems.
I could see them definitely being aggressive toward the factions stepping foot and trying to harvest Azerite off the shores. I would love to see them actually have a little bit of conflict. It doesn't have to be particularly physical, but even just diplomatic conflict with the Horde and Alliance about trying to use Azerite, or maybe the Alliance is trying to get to a spot first, and they're like, we won't touch the Azerite, we're just gonna try to stop the Horde from getting to it, and they're like, no, you're not allowed to step foot around here. I could see.
You guys caused enough problems the last time you guys fought on
Yeah.
these shores. Get out of here.
Exactly. I would love that.
That would be so good.
I really love the concept idea of an entire world revamp, or just not even a revamp, just having these scenarios or these quests like we had in Legion, where we go back to a continent, there's quests there, or there's conflict there. I would love it if we had a Black Empire around the entire world of Azeroth, and just involvement from older expansions like Outlands. We go to recruit the Broken or the Machnathal. I love the concept and idea of going back to Pandaria too, and us dealing with new threats. Just imagine Mantid swarming out with the Black Empire at their back. That'd be cool.
I wonder if they're teasing that with that island expedition.
Maybe.
They did say they would side with them, so. Yeah. You remember that?
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
That became more Precipice in Siege of Orgrimmar, but that could also be a reference to what's to come.
Yeah, could very well be that. I'm pretty sure they haven't forgotten about that. They're probably gonna.
I know a lot of people, a lot of big YouTubers, a lot of content creators are theorizing that Yasharaj might come back, which, let's not throw that out the window. I mean, he was a beating heart and he was still a threat somehow.
Yeah.
Nothing but a beating heart, and his breath was the Shah. That's terrifying what an old god essentially can do even when they're dead. Or presumed dead.
He pretty much controlled the entire continent when you really think about it.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
And we've defeated how many old gods, and they haven't done anything like that yet?
The Shah are still around too, aren't they, in Pandaria?
Yeah, they have.
They're dying out as far as I've read, but
they're lingering, but they're definitely dying out.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah, I remember the model for those. They freaked me out when I first saw them, and now Blizzard uses them for every NPC.
They use them for every old god connection now, but can you blame them? It's a good model.
No, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it was be kind of wacky, and not really wacky, but.
God, if they do something like that with N'Zoth, and they have him have his own little Shawlings around Azeroth, that's just something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be tempted to I guess you would say recycle old models and stuff like that, because I mean obviously you can redirect that time and effort into other things in the game, of course. Mm-hmm. But I would say it would be a little too much at this point in that sense. But then again, I guess it is a little hard to expand upon amorphous blobs for NPCs, and kind of. Yeah. They would have to make actual races and stuff, which of course the Mantid would suit. I would think would be a great idea, like a new Mantid Queen. Everybody's kind of blindsided. How on earth are they already ready to start invading?
How are they back?
Pandaria, much less the world.
Maybe the Pandaren heritage armor could even focus on us coming back to assist in some way, shape, or form to the mainland. That would be pretty cool.
We never really did get our own Shadowpan armor aside from the helm.
I know.
Just saying, Blizzard. The helm is the best part of the set, but the armor. I know the shoulders are paladin shoulders, kind of, but. I mean, they could rework that. They could make a much more stylized and 3D version. There's that PvP set we got in Legion that was pretty close to it that I use sometimes on my Pandaren monk.
You know what I would honestly kill for? I would throw every dime of what little bit of money I have for is just to be able to transmog the starting isle, the wandering isle.
Oh, me too. Me
too. The sword and belt I'm using on Chental here right now. I would give anything.
Let's hope with the new island expedition that has a Pandaren themed area, basically. It's entirely Pandaria assets on a Pandaren isle. I think it's called Snow Blossom.
They might
think about that. I didn't even think about the fact that they gotta include armor sets in that. Yeah.
Yeah, my friend Lost Codex, he mentioned that on Twitter, and I was like, ooh,
oh,
they They could give us some new Pandaren armor. Let's do it. There's some really good. I really didn't like the fact that the starting armor in Pandaria, none of it is transmoggable. Like that's a disservice.
It triggers me
It's
so
so
much.
beautiful. I love it, man.
The
It's,
shield. There's a really cool shield that I like from that.
I mean, have you even seen the amount of weapons of like
Yeah.
weapon stuff there are that aren't even accessible in the game? Like the ringed scimitars that the Shadowpan use. They're beautiful, awesome like weaponry and armor sets that they could use.
G Firepa's entire armor is the it's like the end armor that you get, except for the shoulders. His shoulders are a recolor of a Cataclysm Mother shoulder that you got while leveling in like Vizier or something.
I remember, yeah, because whenever I first made my Huojin monk, way back, I was looking everywhere for the shoulders. I was like, I know I could find the black ones and I could find the purple ones. I could not find the red ones. I was going crazy just trying to find where the heck they get these G Firepal shoulders from, and they just didn't exist.
they're unique only to G Firepa. They do that with some characters. They did that a lot with back in the day when they didn't have unique models, like with like Thrall and Sylvanas and such. Like they just gave unique armor pieces to them.
Yeah.
So, I think the last thing I want to talk about in this video, and then I guess we can wind it down, is the fact that I haven't seen, I guess, anyone in BFA until, and this is spoilers for patch 8.2, so just warning everyone now. Until now, they actually brought up, like, nobody's brought up any, like, I guess, like, lessons from Pandaria or anything about that time, really. But in patch 8.2, Lorthamar brings up what Terran Zoo said to him and Jaina on the Isle of Thunder. But I thought that was a really cool touch. I really
turn away from one another and walk away. See,
Turn
very
from
good.
one another and walk. I love that so much.
It ends here. You know, that's all it takes. It just takes for you to end it.
I really liked the neutral force that the Shadowpan and the Pandaren represented.
Yeah.
Again, like, we don't really see that much with World of Warcraft because, you know, all these factions typically, you have Thrall and Khadgar, but Khadgar is obviously more aligned with the Alliance. Thrall is more aligned with the Horde. Terran Zoo has never been a part of the Horde or the Alliance, and I know that kind of goes against what I was saying earlier, but he's not going to choose a side, realistically. He is his own side.
Yeah, he's on the side of Pandaria.
I really like that, and you don't really have that with any other characters right now, because Magni, as much as he's the Titan Speaker of Azeroth, and as much as he preaches on about how Horde and Alliance need to work together, he was still the king of Ironforge. He went to the Alliance first in the Before the Storm book. He didn't go to the Horde first. He went to them afterwards.
Yeah, well, that's one of the biggest things, again, that I feel. Obviously, there's a bit of a, I guess you would say, a morality imbalance between the factions right now. I feel like, you know, if they wanted to not really redeem the Horde, but kind of settle the score in a realistic kind of way, when it comes to that sort of thing, is, I guess it's just, as I mentioned before, you could have, you know, I think Tyrande really is their only way of making the Alliance do something that it wouldn't normally do, in kind of in the case of the Huojin and other characters that would kind of be sticking with the Horde right now because they don't just want the Alliance to wipe them out, kind of justify their stance for sticking by them. You know, as you've got Tyrande, you've got Jaina, you've got Gen, who would, you know, probably be convinced to stick by them and kind of do these, I guess you would say, morally dubious things that the Alliance wouldn't normally do in order to take out the Horde, whether it's for vengeance or just because they're paranoid the Horde might, you know, try to press the advantage again if things got even after the Battle of Dazar'alor. I know that's hardly on the topic we were talking about, but I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna go that route of, I guess, offering, I guess you would say, a sort of a justification for characters of that
It's
mind.
No, the thing I love about, actually, one thing I do love about the current storyline is Sylvanas is awful. She's awful, but unfortunately, she's Horde, so she brought us all with her at this point. The Alliance wants not just her dead, but all of us dead at this point in time.
Yeah.
They could essentially end the war at any time, but this goes back to something Skoll says all the time, and a lot of people, is the Horde's family. You know, we're all in this together, and I think that's why we've almost been trying to survive, and that's something the Horde has always had to do, you know? And obviously, we're gonna impeach Sylvanas soon, so hopefully.
Yeah.
I can't
I'm
get
Hopefully that doesn't mean Nathanos is next up there. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh no!
It'd be awful. He's like divided. He's like
Thanos for war chief.
Speaker of the Horde. I hate him so much.
God.
I have a love-hate thing with the Thanos. He's really cool, but he's just the biggest asshole in the WoW universe for sure.
I went on a tangent about the Thanos on Twitter where I was like, I like the guy, but we get way too much of him everywhere.
Oh, we really do.
I very vaguely remember him from Vanilla, so it was very strange whenever I only, like, I would say within the last year or two, kind of put together that this Nathanos was the same Nathanos that was in this quest. I think it was like back in Classic. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
There was like
kill him, I
raid
think.
groups, I think, that would go after him in the Eastern Plague Lands.
And it took me all this time to put that together. I was like, that was the same Nathanos! Oh, that's so crazy to...
I know,
Crazy.
I'm
I mean,
weird
Blizzard-
about that
Blizzard
too.
does tend to use, like, the same name for some characters, like Hakar, the Soul Flayer, and Hakar, the Houndmaster, so...
Yeah.
But, I mean, they typically don't have two Forsaken characters named Nathanos, so...
Yeah. So that would, I don't know, I just had to randomly add that in there.
I
was
do
so
like
dumbfounded.
I do like his cool gothic trench coat. That would make for a great Forsaken heritage armor.
I really
Heck
wish
yeah.
you could play as Forsaken that look like him, to tell you the truth. Like, that would be so
That-
good.
That could be their that could be their allied race, maybe. I don't know. Depends. Depends on
That's
how
so good.
depends on how they take that. Let's not turn this into a Forsaken video. What are we, degenerates?
Yeah, they could call it the... I know it exists in Elder Scrolls, but something like Dark Brotherhood or something where you're just like, you know, you could just recruit all sorts of Forsaken versions of every single race in the game that, you know, already exists. You just kind
I
of...
don't know. I don't know how I'd feel about that because that's
I
like Death
don't either.
Knights.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think that's a route they would go, but if they were trying to do a Forsaken allied race that is still Forsaken, unless they were to actually go the route of Sandlane, of course, which is a very...
Me and my hatred for Sandlane is immense because of my RP days with them in Wrath.
Yep, I know all too well.
I used to go Van Helsing on them. Like,
This would make no sense, but something I've always low-key wanted is Pandaren Death Knights. Make no sense at all, but I would just love it for some reason.
I'm not against that. I know that there's a Pandaren follower in Wards of Draenor. Honestly, if they do another Lich King expansion, which I would not doubt it if they do, because that makes money, and Bolvar is a looming threat out there, they could do Death Knights for the allied races in the Pandaren, realistically.
That would be so, especially for Magar orcs. Oh, that would be so awesome. I would love that.
I went Druids, but yeah, I wouldn't argue with any other option we can get with Pandaren. Even Paladin, like, I could see Pandaren Paladin easily make...
I would
GG
love
just
that.
kind of helps you become a paladin. I mean, it works with Razan, it can work with GG, because GG is already that.
Yeah.
Well, even then, I mean, the Pandaren used to have an empire. You could have, like, you've got the lore walkers right there, ready to offer you some kind of plot. Bam! Lore walker comes across this ancient scroll. Look at this. This is a scroll about the ancient imperial celestial order of Pandaria and stuff like that.
Just
Well, they would
give me more Lore Walker Cho, okay?
Oh, please,
man.
Blizzard.
He's my
The
favorite NPC. I love him so much.
Me too. Me too.
He's the voice of Winnie the Pooh and all these other amazing characters. Kind of.
Is he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. he Jim Cummings. That's who voices Lore Walker Cho.
I had no idea.
He voices Tigger. He voices Winnie the Pooh. I'm sure there's other characters that are just as popular that I can't think of at this time. But Yeah.
One of the most memorable trailers is the Throne of Thunder trailer for me, just because
Oh.
of Lore Walker Cho's narration. So good, so good.
We just need more Lore Walker Cho. Like, I loved his epilogue in Legion, not Legion. Pandaria.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he get, you know, thank you, dear Emperor.
I consider that like the actual ending of Mists of Pandaria, to be honest.
No, it is.
Like, it's so beautiful.
That is the ending. I wish that they somehow incorporated war crimes as some kind of like Warcraft series. You know how like they did the Burdens of Shaohao and the Lords of War. I would have loved it if they did something like that with the war crimes. But then again, that would defeat the purpose of the book. So
it would have been really interesting. I always felt like that should have been in the game, because if you didn't read the book, it's kind of a little
that does
confusing.
remind me. I know somebody who's working on a machinima version of War Crimes. Finally, so that's gonna be interesting.
Ooh, I'll have to check that out when that's out.
They're the same person that did the Battle for Azeroth parody trailer, which was basically just the ending of Mr. Pandaria, but with Sylvanas, and
I saw that actually.
it's funny. It better not end up that way. I swear to God.
I'll be so triggered. It's just Brawl. You are not worthy of the Horde's legacy. And then Anduin comes in. Her punishment is not for you.
Oh.
The Talanji comes up. We have all suffered. Oh wait, not Talanji.
No.
Who would it be?
Terran Zoo? Magni.
Yeah. Oh gosh, the war chief part would be interesting. We'll just have Thrall do it again.
Just have Thrall become war chief for crying out loud.
I'm so okay with that. Like, please, we need him now more than ever.
Well, okay, I will say this. I think I mentioned this to you guys before. But if not Thrall, which I don't know which of these I would be more excited for. If not Thrall, a Horde War Council. It would be a way of the Horde to be a bit more, I don't want to say free, but yeah, essentially more free and more diverse, rather than us all just kind of throwing behind this authoritarian dictator. And by the way, the Horde should have learned by now that's not such a good idea. You know,
poor Huojin.
Yeah, like maybe they could just be like, all of us come together, like meet at this table, be like, you know, we need to make sure this doesn't happen again. Like, we are all in this together. We are all the Horde. You know, we don't need.
I'm sure like certain characters would definitely be more, you know, on top. Like Thrall would definitely be more acknowledged and more respected in the. I know for some reason a lot of people believe that the Horde leaders all hate Thrall, but I think that's just people projecting that they hate Thrall, and they're like, my leader would never like Thrall. Like,
why on earth would anybody hate Thrall? I mean, even if you hate...
Besides Sylvanas. I mean, Sylvanas be like, oh, Thrall wants to go back to singing Kumbaya near the Teldrassil. Oh.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't understand how anybody could say, like, the leaders themselves hate Thrall, because, I mean, I could see people kind of having a negative view on him because of the narrative and how they say he had plot armor, and some people even say he was a Mary Sue, which I don't really think so much,
everyone has their own opinions, and you know, like I definitely defend Thrall any chance I get, because the meme of Garrosh did nothing wrong is very very tired and very old now, and still people are singing that phrase. But I really like the idea of a war council, but if they do introduce a war chief, either make it Thrall or make it Bane advised by Thrall. That's who I'd be okay with.
That would be really, really good.
I will be honest. This might be a little bit of a controversy. I would love to see Thrall back. I would not like to see Bane as a war chief. I would actually even rather see Lorthamar. I'm not even kidding.
Really?
Just because I feel like Bane would come across as this very naive and very exploitable sort of leader.
I've definitely agree with that. I think Bane's not ready, and that's why I say that Thrall should take lead, and then he should ready Bane for that position. Kind of groom him like he was going to groom Garrosh.
Yeah, like almost mirror that storyline from Wrath of the Lich King, but have it go proper this time.
Have it actually Bane listen to Thrall. Like, oh yeah, I agree with you, Thrall.
Yeah, that's actually something I would love to see. Just to have.
I think the dog agreed.
I see. How could anybody not want Thrall back as war chief?
I just got some messaged by a friend on Twitter, and I'm not trying to. I really respect their opinion, and they're a good friend too.
Mhm.
And they said that they think that because Thrall essentially he abandoned the what's it called?
The ele-
The circle. The
oh, the
circle.
earthen ring, the earthen ring.
Earthen ring. The earthen ring. Thank you. He abandoned the earthen ring when he was full of doubt and depression and all this stuff, and I can see why that would she even suggested. I'm not going to name the person for their own respect, and again I'm saying that while I don't agree with them, I respect their opinion at the same time.
Hmm.
The God, my brain. The whole thing with Thrall is very difficult to come with and very difficult to talk over because he made a lot of mistakes and he did put Garrosh into power and he did leave when the Legion was invading. But what could he really do? Because the elements weren't working. Even I remember Agra was like, he needs to do this. He needs to leave. He needs to go figure himself out. And I think it's important to think about Thrall. Like, he's been through so much, and a lot of the problems are because of his decisions. Even if he did save Azeroth from Deathwing, the issue with Garrosh still remained, and everything that Garrosh did has led up to now, sadly.
It's almost crazy to think about that, and I actually thought about that the other day. Like, Garrosh was the catalyst for so many events in World of Warcraft post Mists of Pandaria. Like, that moment, like the Siege of Orgrimmar, like at the end of that, and then Warlords just like led to all of this right now, which is crazy to think.
Mr. Pandaria led to Warlords, Warlords led to Legion, Legion led to Battle for Azeroth, and so on. It's
again bringing on what Terranzu said. Every act of reprisal demands reprisal, and here we are, expansions later of reprisal.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, the one thing that Thrall did, or he was going to do, he was about to smash Garrosh's head in, and Varian was stepped in.
That is true. That is 100% true.
And it wasn't Thrall that let Garrosh go free. It was Rathian and Kairos. So there is a little bit of room there that not everything is Thrall and not everything is Garrosh. There's some other groups that kind of cause these certain events, like Gul'dan was the creation of Garrosh, the AU Gul'dan at least, and he did all this terrible stuff.
It's Warlords whole. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a domino effect essentially.
Well, yeah, that was one of the things we were talking about earlier was the Garrosh thing was actually the whole how Garrosh really was coming across as a pretty decent, I guess you would say, lore character up until the whole, like I like to call it corruption cliche that they like to use against all sorts of characters that always turn out to be ends justify the means sorts of characters. The ones that are willing to do some dirty things for what they view as the long-term good. Whether it be just for their people or for the world itself.
Almost like the Huojin when you think about it, like you were saying earlier.
Exactly. That was my whole point. I feel like the Huojin are as a faction what Garrosh could have been as a character, or what they're intended to be, I guess. That way. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. And that's like the kind of Garrosh I was like really on board with, like kind of chaotic when he gets stuff, for the greater good. He does some morally gray things. Like that's actual morally gray, not like Sylvanas.
Yeah, not like morally black and call it gray. It's like there actually is a genuine. For the most part, there was an actual genuine goal. Like, I always love to reference that dialogue that Garrosh had with Vol'jin in Krasarang whenever you're doing the dominance offensive rep and storyline, where he tells Vol'jin like he's not willing to let his people starve in the desert. He's going to be willing to do a few bad things, but it's because he cares about his people enough that he's willing to be the bad guy for their good, I guess.
Yeah, I will give Blizzard credit here. At least they didn't have Garrosh be like, "Oh, I was being manipulated by the old god." It's actually the other way around with Garrosh. He manipulated
He
the
was
power of Yasharaj for himself, which is honestly, I like that they did that instead of making it, the other way around. Look at me, I'm going crazy because the old god whispers. Like
there's-
that's used a lot in Blizzard's lore, sadly.
Yeah,
There-
that's why I love to call it the corruption cliche. A lot of I would say games and things with stories in general seem to make that mistake. Like Mass Effect is a big one. I love to reference with that. Obviously, Mass Effect spoilers if that's a a big deal to anybody. But the Elusive Man in Mass Effect 2, he's this character that's even viewed as a terrorist by the Alliance of Mass Effect, but he's willing to do dirty things essentially to see humanity progress. And I feel like he's another one of those wasted characters. Like, yeah, he does some morally gray things, but his results show. Like, again, Mass Effect 2 spoilers, you beat the Collectors. If it weren't for Cerberus, you wouldn't have beaten the Collectors.
right.
You had to do some dirty things in order to do that. And then at the end of the game, you can choose whether to save the base and use its technology, which was made in a very perverse manner of harvesting and killing countless numbers of humans, or destroying it because of ideals. And again, I feel like that could fall into Huojin and Tushui thing. Like a Huojin would want to use this kind of information and knowledge to defeat their enemies, whereas the Tushui would want to see it destroyed. Like that, I feel like, even aside from the Huojin and Tushui thing, I feel like that would have made a way better premise for Battle for Azeroth in a way that wouldn't have really made either side or faction look evil or good. Like the whole Azerite thing, they agreed that they were going to use it to heal the wound. What if they did that? What if they took it and they healed the wound, but there was still a ton of Azerite left? How would the different factions have used it? Well, maybe the Horde would have been like, well, the Legion thing just happened. We need to learn how to weaponize this and use this to fight off greater foes in case the Legion comes back again. Whereas the Alliance would be like, this is clearly a very exploitable resource. We need to gather all this and either stash it away or destroy it. Obviously, that's something to butt heads over that isn't particularly good or evil on both sides. There are differences of ideals.
And that's one of the things I think that they needed to do more with BFA if they really wanted to get us pumped up about the faction war again, was focus more on, one, being proud of your faction, right? But
Yeah.
two, having more, ideals rather than evil and good. I think that was a big thing that was missed in Battle for Azeroth.
Okay, I was just about to say the same thing. Like, in Battle for Azeroth, I think the Alliance definitely feels proud about their faction, but when you're the Horde right now, it's very hard to be happy and proud of yourself when the actions that you essentially are doing in like Stormsong Valley or Teldrassil or so on. And like that is why so many people are like, we need Thrall back, we need Saurfang back. It's why they focused on that with Bane as a character, but it would have been great if they had instead focused on why it's great to be Horde, or the positives of being the Horde, rather than the negatives. They really throw the negatives in our face here with the Horde, and that, I think, that was a big mistake. But at the same time, when you got Sylvanas as war chief, I can understand why they did that too.
Go ahead, Box.
Oh no, I think in this case, and I guess if it was any other character besides Sylvanas, it would have actually been nice to see the Alliance be the aggressors for once.
Oh yeah,
I would have
I-
loved this flipped around.
But that's exactly like the scenario I presented earlier. I feel like that would be a perfect scenario for the Alliance to justifiably act first. They don't trust Sylvanas, and obviously the Horde would be wanting to weaponize all these things under the ideal of wanting to combat a greater threat later on. Well, obviously, look who's in charge of it. You've got Sylvanas there, who had, destroyed Gilneas, essentially, and did all of these very questionable things. How are they, and according to the Alliance perspective, left their king to die on the Broken Shore just because it was convenient,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that could have very easily been capitalized upon in a way of, I would say, a mutual misunderstanding of the actual circumstances that lead to a great clash. That, again, doesn't really make one side look evil or good. Right now, if you say for the Horde, you almost have to whisper, I'm sorry, afterward. Like,
Yeah.
like, hey, that stuff sucked. I'm sorry we did that. And I think, yeah, everything the Horde did, especially Teldrassil, geez, even just invading it felt wrong. And then, of course, the burning had to happen. Like, it was just piled on. At that, I was so nauseated with the Horde by the end of the War of
It
Thorns.
was too much. It was way too much.
I was like, I don't want to play this faction. I was so tempted to actually leave the game. I left the Horde for a little while, I'm not going to lie. Because I just could not feasibly come up with a reason for my character to stick around.
I remember, like, I remember completely the emotions that everybody had. Everybody was very. Some people were happy about the burning. Some people were. It was very. Not many were happy about the burning.
I was gonna say that was a very minority opinion.
There was a very minority of people. It was mostly like people are like, yeah, take that, Night Elves. Like, I always hated your race.
Yeah, or just the people that are streaming pro Sylvanas.
I don't know how many days it was, but then they released the Old Soldier cinematic, and so many people reflected on that. So many people loved that cinematic, and I'm taken aback because now still people are supporting Sylvanas despite that cinematic, despite the narrative of them pushing us towards Sarfang's Horde.
That's how they wanted us to feel, I think, was like you were saying, like they wanted us to feel like Sarfang in that cutscene almost about the Horde, and I love that.
I think they were kind of assuming that, for the most part, and I do think this holds true. The forums seem to hold true that most people still obviously side with Sarfang whenever it comes to things, but they don't really. I don't know. I guess maybe they're just sick of the whole rebellion thing. They're sick of us always, being the rebels and such. Now, I will say this. My biggest issue with the War of Thorns was less that it happened, and more that we were smiling the entire time, and we were happily complying. And there was almost no representation of the people, like, whispering to each other, "Are we the baddies?" Like,
oh, that would have been really cool to have the leaders, like even G Firepaw there, or something, saying, "Why are we doing this?" That
there were so many opportunities. I mean, it was so sudden that I think maybe that's their justification for showing so little of the resistance. But I think lore-wise, the War of Thorns went on for a little bit, didn't it?
I don't remember how long it lasted, but I remember it was it lasted at least 2 weeks. Like they had like a 2-week it was a pre-event, so it was like 2 weeks of the War of Thorns, and then they got rid of it. You couldn't do it anymore because it was a pre-event. But I think, as far as I remember, they had Bane Bloodhoof moved down to the Silithus. They didn't want Bane a part of it because they knew that he would shout and say no to this. They actually were very selective of who they told about the War of Thorns planned to in the leadership of the Horde, because they didn't know who would approve, they didn't know who would, disprove it, so they didn't tell it to everybody. Only Sarfang, Nathanos, and Sylvanas, as far as we're told, knew about it. And Sarfang was the first one to be against it when things started going gray, and things started going black.
Mm-hmm.
So of course characters like Nathanos and Sylvanas would never be like, oh, I don't know if we're doing the right thing, guys. It was strictly only Sarfang, and they wanted to focus on only him. Especially because he was the one leading the attack.
Yeah.
He felt like crap afterwards, because this is the same guy who took part in the genocide of Draenei children, and once again he's doing that to Night Elves. He probably was going through some serious PTSD, and that's, again, very tragic for a character like Sarfang.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the reason why I was clarifying on the point that I don't think that it's not that I think that these things shouldn't happen in the narrative at all. It's just that I feel like it's a great almost a disservice to the characters that would not happily comply to this kind of thing, to not show their lack of compliance, to not show their, them speaking out or even just whispering to each other. They always have these asides where you can just kind of stay a while and listen, and you learn a little. You eavesdrop on some people, hear what they have to say and what they think about certain circumstances and situations.
It'd be really cool if the players were almost rewarded in a way. Like, say, like, you get to a certain quest, and you see, like, I'll just use G-Firepod as an example. He's standing there, and you can go talk to him and see what he has to say about it. Like, you get rewarded more lore for looking around the area a little bit. I think stuff like that's always nice. And just to get back to Mists of Pandaria, like, every time I play through it, I actually find something new, which is pretty crazy. Like, I don't know, it was honestly one of my favorite leveling experiences. So anyway, Skoll, Kai, I can't thank you guys enough for being on today. This was really actually awesome, and I actually hope we do this again soon. For sure, maybe like an 8.2 speculation or something.
I love that.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
So, for those of you that want to find these two, you can find Skoll Shorties on YouTube, and you can find Kai on Twitter. These two are more than happy to talk about anything lore-related, or, even just World of Warcraft-related. They're very friendly, very nice, very awesome people. But anyway, guys, thanks again for being on. I can't thank you two enough again. And I gotta do my traditional Box and Jackalope outro. We'll see you next time.
See ya. See ya.